The movie begins with Nick and Angie sitting in their car parked in front of Nick's house. It has been 3 years since Nick last visited his family, and he had no contact with them. However, Angie manages to convince him to return home for Christmas. Nick's mother Beth opens the door and is overjoyed to have her son back. She warmly welcomes Angie as well. Just then, Nick's father Tony arrives and immediately begins to express his disappointment over Nick not reaching out to him for 3 years. The situation escalates, but Beth intervenes and manages to diffuse the tension. Soon after that, Nick's pregnant sister, Kate, and her husband Scott arrive there, completing the family gathering. Angie, Beth, and Kate play a word game. But suddenly, the news of recent stabbings in the city shows from the TV. They rush to find out more about the incident. However, their grandfather, without hesitation, directly blame immigrants and minorities, asserting that England has now become unsafe because of their arrival. Angie, deeply offended, and challenges the annoying old man's views. Nick steps in and insults Kate, urging her to shut up, taking Angie by the hand. Nick swiftly leads her upstairs away from the conflict. Realizing that coming to his racist house was a big mistake, Nick plans to leave with Angie the next morning. The couple decides to sleep in separate bedrooms because of the conservative household. Nick and Angie wake up early to slip away while the others are sleeping. They make their way to the front door, only to find a peculiar barrier blocking their path. Nick inspects it closely, even attempting to break it with an axe, but in vain. The others have also arrived at this point, and they try to find a solution. Tony gathers everyone in the living room, where a mysterious message shows up on the television screen. The message instructs them to remain inside and wait for further instructions. Tony thinks this to be a government emergency broadcast, which means something bad is happening outside the doors. They then try to connect to the internet and mobile network, but network was not there. The family gathers to share a meal. However, when Angie coughs a little, then Grandad swiftly jumped to the conclusion that she must be infected with an illness, leading to a heated argument. Tony, frustrated by the argument, silences everyone, and as he was to carve the turkey, a message abruptly appears on the TV screen, alerting them that all the food has been contaminated and is unfit for consumption. All gathered in the living room, the TV screen is now showing another instruction. It urges them to exercise caution and use bleach to cleanse themselves of contaminants. Of course, the entire family is forced to follow the command by Tony. Beth overhears the joyful banter between Nick and Angie, encouraged by their merriment. She tries to spend some time with her husband, however, her dictator husband reminds her that this is no mere game and insists on the gravity of the situation. All seems good until a bag of syringes drops from the fireplace. Simultaneously, a message is displayed on the television screen, urging the family to take vaccinations due to the polluted air. Nick immediately voices his concerns, but Tony doesn't care. In his view, compliance is the only course of action. Angie interjects, stating that open syringes can be dangerous as they might be contaminated. Ignoring Angie, Tony impulsively administers a dose to himself. Then he sterilizes the syringes by boiling them. The Grandad, annoyed by the apparent cowardice of the family members, abruptly grabs a syringe and administers the vaccine. Slowly, each family member starts to accept the vaccine. Suddenly, the Grandad begins to show a peculiar behavior and falls down and passes away, leaving the family in shock. However, Tony and Kate step forward, assuring everyone that the Granddad's demise resulted from an allergic reaction. As the family tries to come to terms with this sudden loss, another message appears demanding the return of the medical equipment. Tony takes charge and assigns Scott the task of returning the syringes. Scott retrieved the syringes and places them through a mysterious hole on the wall. In a moment of curiosity, Scott inserts his hand into the hole. To their horror, a message promptly appears on the television, warning them that the access slot has now become contaminated. Scott's luck runs dry as he loses 3 fingers in an instant, but fortunately Angie, who's a doctor, skillfully sutures Scott's wounds. Descending the stairs, Nick sees the new message on the screen. It declares that someone within them is contaminated, emphasizing the need for immediate isolation. The racists immediately think it's Angie, as she has coughed earlier. Nick attempts to defend her, but Angie acknowledges that they have no choice. She's locked with the body of the Grandad. Nick stands outside Angie's room to talk with her. Angie urges him to turn off the TV. Nick gets the opportunity to switch off the TV, but Kate comes there, and her anger flares when she discovers the TV is off. She calls out to her dad, who promptly arrives and switches the TV. Back on the screen displays an array of symbols before a red message warns them about the potential risks of interrupting the emergency signal. Kate launches an attack on Nick, making him defend himself. Scott intervenes, escalating the situation. Further chaos ensues as Scott hurls Nick at Kate, resulting in her falling from upstairs and fracturing her leg. The pain causes her to lose consciousness. Nick, concerned for his sister's well-being, attempts to provide assistance, but Tony, being an irresponsible father, announces that he must go to his room and leaves Nick to tend to his injured sister alone. Nick rushes upstairs and relays Kate's condition to Angie, who grimly informs him that the wound has become infected and without medical treatment, Kate will die. Now we see Nick heads to the bathroom to freshen up. Suddenly his eyes fall upon a toilet pipe in which he creates a hole and binds his phone on a stick to catch a glimpse of the outside. Meanwhile, a loud noise startles Scott from his sleep, and he finds a warning flashing on the television screen, indicating an ongoing exfiltration. Tony appears, commanding Scott to accompany him. Fueled by resentment, Scott initially refuses, but Tony skillfully manipulates him, and Scott obviously complies in the bathroom. Nick witnesses a peculiar sight. It seems a swarm of snake-like wires is attacking his device. Suddenly, Tony and Scott emerge, assaulting Nick and restraining him. Nick tries to make Tony watch the video, but he disregards his claim. He shatters Nick's phone and forces Scott to check the television for any messages. A message appears saying extraction of information from the sleeper agent. Tony swiftly deciphers the hidden meaning, realizing what must be done. Without hesitation, he turns his sadistic attention to his own son, subjecting him to unimaginable torment. However, his act is interrupted by Beth's screams. Tony and Scott rush downstairs only to find Kate's lifeless body. Tony, devoid of remorse, callously declares that casualties are an unfortunate reality of war. Beth, having had enough, lashes out and delivers a deserving slap across his face. Beth locks herself in the bathroom. Now Angie finds a small television in her room, and to her surprise, the screen displays the message, "I see you." Curiously, she opens the TV, only to discover a black throbbing heart lying within. Suddenly, a notification appears alerting her that the security has been breached. Mysterious black smoke comes out from the pipes in the walls, and a piercing alarm jolts Nick awake. A message urges all survivors to return to ground level. Nick unlocks Angie's room. Tragically, their efforts come too late for Beth, taking refuge in the living room. The remaining survivors barricade themselves inside. Angie tells Nick about the cryptic messages displayed on the TV. Just as tension thickens, the television suddenly starts transmitting messages implying the presence of a divine being. Tony desperately seeks a sign, and astonishingly, the baby within Kate's womb comes back to life. Lewis and Ruby's names begin to appear on the screen, reinforcing Scott and Tony's belief in the divine being. The next message delivers a chilling ultimatum. They must sacrifice someone to save the baby. The group immediately decides that Angie should be sacrificed. However, Angie tries to save her by stating that only she possesses the skills to perform the surgery. They force Angie to perform the surgery immediately. Tony begins to attack Nick instead, but Angie refuses to perform the surgery until Scott tries to save Nick. With no other option, he complies, but is immediately killed by Tony. Nick retaliates against Tony, engaging in a severe battle. After an exhausting struggle, Nick manages to overpower Tony, with Angie's help, to finally kill him. He drops the television on him. As the TV crashes onto Tony, something peculiar happens. Cables start emerging not only from the TV, but also from the windows. To Nick's horror, the cables possess Tony, transforming him into a grotesque creature. The cable creature speaks through Tony, urging Nick and Angie to worship it. Surprisingly, Nick realizes that the creature doesn't intend to kill them. Instead, it reveals itself as a parasite dependent on its existence to survive. Nick takes action. He destroys the creature hidden within the TV, causing it to explode. In an instant, the cable creature died, bringing relief to Nick and Angie. However, their relief is short-lived. To their utter shock, the supposedly defeated creature surges up again, and it mercilessly kills Nick and Angie. Then the creature brings a small TV before the dead body of Kate. The cables melt Kate's flesh, reducing her to a mere skeleton. Amidst this horrifying sight, we catch a glimpse of the baby, seemingly unaffected by the chaos. Suddenly, the TV springs to life, displaying two messages Hello, Ruby, and worship me. The movie ends with a chilling view of the neighborhood. These creatures have invaded every house, leaving no one safe from their sinister